I am here today with Chris of Decibel magazine. We're here today to talk about the perhaps the biggest stories leading up into 2025, or at least what we're looking forward to 2025. There's a lot to discuss there. Chris, thank you for taking the time to join me on the channel. Your first time as a guest here. It won't be the last, I'm sure, unless we completely butcher this. But I'm sure it won't be the last. So thank you very much for taking the time to join me for this chat.
Amazing. Thank you, Pedro. Looking forward to being part of the A&P-Reacts video for once, one time in my life, maybe hopefully more. And yeah, we will be talking about some of the bigger stories, what I think are going to be big stories in 2025, some of which have already been debunked or answered, but there's going to be a lot of questions coming out of some of these points that we're going to be making today.
Yeah, and I at the end of at the end of the points that I know that you've put together, I want to pick your brain in terms of what do you think some of the most anticipated albums will be, because I think that's
Mm,
always something that people really look forward into the new year in terms of what that new year is going to bring us. So let's get right into it, because this one for me is very special to me, because the reason why I listen to metal today, the reason why I have the channel is because of Sepultura. If it wasn't for
mm.
Sepultura, I wouldn't be sitting here with you today. Those guys changed my life.
Mine too. Mine too,
I
brother.
remember watching a Rise video on Headbangers Ball, and that's pretty much the reason why I only wear army cargo shorts is because of Max in that
Max.
video. Yeah, it's the only reason. I've told him this a million times. He changed me not only as a music listener, but he changed me even as far as my dress code is concerned. So with that BC Rich, it's iconic. It's
Yeah,
just it's an iconic music video. So,
right. He was kind of like the new James Hetfield, right?
yeah,
He was like the thrash, like the death thrash version of James Hetfield. He had that image or that look that you knew it was immediately recognizable, right? The BC Rich, the cargo shorts, maybe like a Celtic Frost shirt. Like he was our guy.
100%, 100%. And the whole band had a very cool look. If you think about Sepultura from that time period of Beneath the Remains, Arise, that era there, they also look the part. Like when at that time period, if you were to think about what a prototypical metalhead looks like, it would be them. They
Right,
were kind of the image of what the prototypical metalhead was, like, leather jacket, tight jeans, that kind of shit.
right. Big high tops, yeah.
Big high tops, yes, the big high tops, the
Yeah,
bullet belts, all of that shit.
sure.
So let's talk Sepultura.
Yeah.
It's been discussed quite a bit about a possibility of a reunion of the OG lineup with the
Mhm.
Cavalera brothers, with Andreas and Paul coming all together. If not for a record, at very least to do a show, maybe a little bit of a tour run. What are your thoughts as of today on the possibility of 2025 giving us that?
Sure. I'll never say never, right? So I think, you've heard from Andreas recently came out and said like the Cavalera's re-recording Morbid Visions, Bestial Devastation as quote unquote disrespectful, right? That's it, maybe in schizophrenia because that's what the first record he was on, right? So he's calling these things disrespectful. That could be a shot across the bow, like, hey, I don't want to do anything with you guys. And then, Max said, I think back in July this year of 2024, Max said a reunion was out of the question, right? Obviously they have the reasons for not wanting to do this. But if you go back in time in 2010, I think they discussed actually doing a reunion, and they actually got really close, right? I think it was all down to particulars, like whatever the business end of it looked like, and they think they just couldn't agree on that because I think personally they probably don't have a good relationship. They probably, in my opinion, so they're not wanting to probably do that outside of a business reason, and obviously for the fans, right? You and I would pay to go see Sepultura OG reunion in a heartbeat, right? And I think a lot of people that listen to your channel would. A lot of people that read Decibel would. We would go. That would be amazing to see that.
Mhm.
I saw them for the first time on the Beneath the Remains tour in Flint, Michigan, and it was life changing. It was like I don't need to hear anything else. You know.
Yeah, yeah, no, I'm with you. I heard something from Max in terms of the reunion a while back that he even had proposed the idea of them traveling in two different tour buses, and with Gloria managing the Cavalera brothers, and then Andreas could get whoever he wanted to manage his crew
Right.
in order to make things a little bit more feasible. So almost like they would only show up together on stage to perform, and then everybody would go their separate ways. But obviously, I think I don't know. I don't think 2025 is going to give us that reunion, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. I'm never going to say never, because
Yeah.
Man, if there are some bills to pay and everybody wants to make some money, that reunion would totally make a shitload of money.
Right. And I think, let's call it like, they may not mend fences, right? The Cavalier brothers and Andreas and Paulo. They may not mend fences, but they're all getting older, right? We're all getting older. At some point they may just say, you know what, like this, whatever happened in the past is the past, and let's live in the moment. I know Max is a very in the moment guy, like he doesn't want to relive 85 anymore. He doesn't want to relive 1993 anymore. He wants to kind of be in the moment. So if it makes sense for them to kind of be in the moment and sort of say, yeah, like we know we had some problems in the past, but let's kind of do this one last thing for the fans. And I'm thinking that one last thing could be both a reunion tour worldwide, a world tour, or at least they start in Europe first because that's maybe where the money is, and then hit North America and rest of the world. And then if that goes well, then an album. I would be fully convinced that by the end of 2025, if they don't have a worsening of relations, that distinct possibility of them announcing a reunion tour with the OG lineup in 2026 is possible.
I'm really hoping so. And I was a lot more positive about the idea of this reunion until the last words that you mentioned from Andreas. When I saw that interview from him, I was like, okay, it's not happening. Like
Yeah,
that to me kind of put a little bit of a damper on things.
sure. And that's 100% true. I mean, he may be trying to put a damper on those things because guess what? Those two guys get the same questions every single time they get interviewed. Max, when are you going to reunite with Andreas? Hey, Andreas, when are you going to reunite with Max? And they may be trying to stop that stuff because they're tired of answering the question, but they may also be saying in the back of their minds, maybe this makes sense for us, right? Maybe this makes sense for us from a business standpoint. And also, let's give back to the fans one last time, tour, maybe, album, maybe, and let's drive it. And after that, we go our separate ways forever. And Sepultura legacy lives on because guess what? Sepultura ostensibly is over, right? Because
Yeah, yeah.
the Derek Green lineup is done after these European tours with Obituary. I think they have maybe some tours in 2025 left. I can't remember now, but the U.S. tour that they did recently with I can't remember, was it with Life of Agony and etc. Uh, you know that tour went really well. The European tour with Obituary, was Obituary, Life of Agony, and Sepultura. The European tour went really well, right? And so that was a good kind of, we're going to close the door in Sepultura to open the door back up to Sepultura is kind of how I look at it, right? They're opening the door for possibilities of a reunion.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it would have been very difficult to pull off a reunion if you still have the lineup that it's current together. I mean, like, how are you going to tell some of those guys that you know what, it was nice having you for all these years, but now we're doing this and we don't need you anymore. So I can see that, but I think there's going to be perhaps a little bit of time once this is all said and done for the dust to settle, for them to clear their
Mm,
heads, for them to get in a different headspace. But from a pure, I'm not even talking about from a business point of view, from a fan's point of view, the demand for that reunion is there. And I think for the
yeah.
legacy of the band, it would be such a nice way to finish it off, to really put a period
Mm,
on that sentence and just end it off on a note that would make the fans extremely happy about the moment and about what the legacy of the band has been over the years. So I think they owe not that a band never owes the fans anything, but I think they
mm.
kind of quote unquote, they kind of owe the fans a little bit that reunion.
I don't know if, yeah, I agree with you. I don't know if they owe the fans so much as more they want to give it to the fans because they wouldn't be here where they are today without the fans, right? So maybe this is one way of saying, a give back, right? We're going to pay it back to you guys by doing this one last thing, even though we don't agree ostensibly on whatever life choices we made in the past or the business choices we had in the past or managerial, choices. We're going to give this one back, and I think that's possible.
I'm with you. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I think 2025 probably not, but I think 2026, man, Slayer got back together. So I mean,
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
so you never know. So I just
Yeah.
think that life is short. They're all getting
Mm.
older. You never know
Yeah.
what's going to happen tomorrow. Do
Right.
it while you still can, while everybody's still around, versus then regretting not having it done because one of the guys is no longer around. I think that's also something to really think about.
Right. Yeah. And like you said earlier, it would be let's call it a big money maker for metal. Just to see Andreas up there on the stage, to Max's left, Paolo to Max's right. I think that's how it goes. Max in the center, Igor behind, four guys from Brazil nailing out those old songs, from, I would say, from Schizophrenia all the way through Roots, right? That kind of set list.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, first obviously it would be the festivals, right? They do Hellfest, they would do the big fest, they do Wacken, and then they would probably do the, like a European, then a stateside tour
Yeah, I
or a
agree
North
with you.
American tour.
And it would be super successful, that's for sure. The next line item on your list is Dismember performing live at an ever-flowing stream,
Yeah,
a live stream, first for the USA, first time at Decibel Metal and Beer Festival. By the way,
that's
I've
right.
never been to Decibel Metal and Beer Festival.
Ah,
I need to make my presence felt there at some point in time.
you definitely do. You're not that far away, right? It's like what, a
No,
45-minute flight from Toronto, right?
yeah, yeah. So
Maybe an
like
hour.
we're
Yeah,
very close. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're
yeah,
very close.
right. So the Decibel Beer Metal Fest is really, a 2-day metal festival in April. There's one also in Denver in December, which just ended actually last weekend. And the idea is that you have two levels of tiers, right? You have the concert, which you can just go into and just enjoy like as a normal ticket buyer, or you can buy the beer portion of it, which is you get a little like a cup, which is infinitely refillable with all the various craft beers. It's all craft beer. There's no PBR and all that stuff. All craft beer from around the country that come in, and you can sample everything up to from a low ABV to a 8 point plus ABV, right? So you can get a nice buzz while also watching your favorite metal bands of the day. So that's my spiel on Decibel Metal and Beer Fest. It's a really cool festival. It's really short, meaning it's just 2 days. It starts around 4 or 5 p.m. in the afternoon, goes to about 11:30, 11:45 at night. So by the time you're done with your beer, with your metal, you can go back to your hotel, go back to your Airbnb and not be completely just obliterated, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and 2 days allows you to go as hard in the paint as you can
100%.
because it's only 2 days.
Yeah, right. And it doesn't start until 4 or 5 p.m., depending on where the set lists end up. So you can have that whole morning to recover from the previous night, or you can go into Philadelphia and grab a cheesesteak or whatever, go see the sights, see the Liberty Bell, see the Rocky statue, and then go get your medal on, right? It's a great venue, really clean. It has two floors. Well, the second floor is for the beer tickets, where you can sit down and have a table, and you can kind of just be an old guy and sit at a table and have your beer and watch metal, right? They've had like Mayhem, they've had Enslaved, they've had Suicidal Tendencies. I mean, you name it. So some big names coming to this festival.
Sounds like a lot of fun. I like the idea of the beer. I saw that for the first time actually. I went to Punk in the Park, the NoFX farewell tour run
Mhm.
this summer when they played in Toronto, and they had that, but it wasn't for the whole day. It was just for the first 2 hours of the festival. You got this little shot, well, a little bit bigger than a shot glass,
Yep.
and it was you could drink as much as you want. You could go
Same
to any
concept.
little tent and just get a refill on it and try all different kinds of beer. I'm not a drinker anymore, but I was with a friend of mine who's an avid beer drinker, and he was having a great time because a lot of these beers you would have never tried them out on his own, and
Yep.
this way you're not really committed to a full pint. You're just sampling them, like you're kind of getting different samples and getting to taste everything, and then kind of figure it out which ones are your favorite.
Right. Like if you've never had a milk stout before, there's probably a milk stout you can try. Don't like that? Go to the cider, have a mead, right? You can have a mead. So there's all kinds of different things. You want a double IPA, you want a quadruple IPA, sure, it's probably there. You want a chocolate IPA, whatever, sure, it's probably there, right? Depending on the craft brewer. And these are guys are coming in from like California and Colorado, North Carolina, et cetera, coming in and all, sort of setting up their little vendorville, which is just, put your beer, put your little cup up to the counter, they fill it up, you come back 5 seconds later, they fill it up, no questions asked.
How is the growth in terms of the fans coming to the festival itself? How do you see its own growth?
Yeah, so I think where it is right now, which is at the is at the Fillmore in Philadelphia. I think it's probably where it's going to be. I don't think it's going to grow into, say, like a bigger European festival, right? Or Maryland Death Fest, which is like multiple stages, different parking lots and different venues. It could, but I think it's got this really homegrown vibe, a really DIY vibe that makes you feel like you're part of a scene versus part of a machine,
Hmm.
right? So when you go there, you kind of like you see your friends, you meet new people, and it's all kind of close together. I can't remember the cap of the room, maybe it's 2,500 or something like that. So you're looking at that kind of audience, right? 2,500, 3,500, give or take. Um, but you're always close by to someone, right? You're always if you want to talk to your friends, you'll find your friends. You want to talk to a vendor about a shirt or a CD or an LP, you can talk to your vendor without being like, without having 5,000 people behind you waiting to buy stuff from that vendor. So it's really more DIY. It almost reminds me of the festivals in the 90s where you kind of felt like you're a part of something rather than you're attending something. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, totally. I like that vibe. I attended a festival, this is 2019 before the pandemic in Finland called Dark River Festival. At the time they were only a 2 day festival. Now they've grown into a 3 day festival and
Hmm.
they've grown from one stage to two stages and stuff.
Hmm.
So when we went there, one of the things that I really enjoyed about that festival was that homegrown, very organic vibe where everybody's
Yeah.
a family. Everybody knows one another because it's in a
Yeah.
small town. Very few people were coming from outside in, so it was pretty much the town's metal scene that kept that festival alive and going. And to be a part of that, it was super cool because you really felt at home. People made you feel very welcome and stuff. I like that kind of vibe. I think it's really cool, and it's kind of getting lost a little bit with these much bigger festivals, like you said, that really feel like they're just feeding you into this machine.
Right. And I think the cool Decibel does have other stages, but they're on other days, right? So they'll have like a pre-fest, which is upstairs at the venue on a much smaller stage. So if you want to see like the up and coming underground death metal band or thrash metal band or whatever, they're going to be on that stage, right? They're going to do the pre-fest, and then you have the after party, which you can like go bowl with like Undeath or Sanguisugabog or something like that. So there's other. It's not just like you can go to the fest, the 2 day fest, and just do that, or you can go to the pre-party, or you go to the after parties too. I mean, so there's a little more dynamics than just being at the fest and going home. There's other things, as part of that festival dynamic. It's pretty
So,
cool.
so besides the festival, talk a little bit about Dismember performance.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think Dismember's first US show was 1993 with Deicide Invader, right? That's their first US tour. They've been back since. I think, US is their most second toured country outside of Germany. But they're going to be playing their debut like an Everflowing Stream in full, right? That is the album everyone wants to hear because that is the album that everyone remembers from 1991, right? That's got Soon to Be Dead, Override the Overture, Skinner Alive, and it's the original lineup, right? So they've all agreed to come back. Maddie's back, Richard Cabeza, and they're all back performing, with Fred on drums. They're all back together performing this debut album, and it's critical, right? The album is critical because it is part of the original Swedish death metal scene that everyone from like Gatecreeper to Death Evocation, they're all like really enjoying this that sound and trying to be inspired by that sound rather than replicate that sound. So I think it's a really cool thing for Dismember to come back to the U.S. and do this festival, play a very critical album all the way through, and then get to play like deeper cuts. I don't usually play like Sickening Arc, for example. They don't play that very often. So is Life and So is Life. They don't play that very often. Those are two deeper cuts. So you're going to get to hear those things that you've never heard before or didn't hear very often. I think they played those two songs like 20 times in their entire career. So you're going to get to hear cooler songs that you never heard before at this festival back to back, which is kind of a popular thing these days, is do those album sets.
Yeah, a lot of bands are doing those full-on albums, especially like throwback albums that had a big impact in the career of the band or their
Yep.
fan favorites. So they've been announced for next year's festival. Is there any other announcements been made in terms of what the lineup is going to be in 2025?
Yeah, the whole festival announcement's been announced. I think so. They're headlining day two. Exodus is doing day one, so they're doing Bonded by Blood. So they're doing a full album set at Bonded by Blood, which of course is guess what? So now you have one of the most critical thrash albums, which is kind of unsung, right? Bonded by Blood.
Yeah,
I mean,
but it's
when
to
you
me
think
it's one of their best.
it is, well, yeah, I mean, I think it is their best, right? Obviously, Pleasure of the Flesh and Fabulous Disaster are good, right? Impact is Imminent, maybe not so much. Um, but yeah, so you're going to hear like the critical thrash album on day one, and day two, you're going to hear the most critical death metal album of Sweden of our scene. So it's kind of a cool little pairing you get. I have to look at the festival. It's been fully announced. I have to look at the other bands on the festival. I
But
haven't.
those are the two headliners, right?
Those are the two headliners. Yeah.
I
Yep.
think that's enough to get people excited about coming. If the free-flowing beer was not going to get people excited, then these two iconic bands definitely will. I saw Exodus on this latest tour run that they were on. Great show with Havoc and like it was just a great performance, great band.
Sure. Yeah, I just looked it up. So your Demolition Hammer. I mean,
Oh.
famous New York death thrash, right? Hard hitting. Pig Destroyer, famous grind band. Darkest Hour doing an Undoing Ruin set, so we're doing a full album. Devil Master, who's kind of like this gothic black metal band from Philly. Sonia, who I think just signed to Century Media. Mother of Graves, who had one of their albums appeared in the top albums of our top 40 list this year. Eternal Champion, which features Arthur Risk, who is a big, up and coming producer, produced like Unto Others, I think Cavalier Conspiracy. So it's going to be a cool fest. Yeah, Maul, I think death metal band Maul, Vicious Blade, Vastum. So it should be a great fest.
Yeah, it sounds like a great lineup. Pig Destroyer is one that definitely piques my interest as well. I've never seen them live, but those guys have some heavy sound coming out of them for sure.
Yeah, it's a very violent set. I mean, when you talk about grindcore and feeling dangerous, I mean, a lot of times when you see metal bands, sometimes they don't they sound heavy and they sound brutal or they sound aggressive, but they aren't aggressive. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Pig Destroyer kind of comes at you like you hear it, but you also kind of feel that energy coming off the stage, which is kind of rare for metal these days when the metal bands are so focused on perfect sound and perfect stage performance, choreographs and lights and flames and stuff. These guys are just coming right at your throats. I mean, like 100% of the time they're coming for you, and it's kind of a cool thing to see.
There's another band you mentioned before that kind of has that same vibe, and that's Sanguisugabogg.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
They're very same similar style. I mean, not only they're heavy, you when you go to the show, you feel like, man, I'm gonna get fucked.
something's gonna happen, right?
Yeah, yeah, you just got that vibe. Like today is gonna be the day where some shit is gonna go sideways.
Yeah. Speaking of Sanguisugabogg, Devin, who's the vocalist for Sanguisugabogg, is in this band Earthburner with Jeremy Wagner from Broken Hope, and they just played the Denver Festival last weekend, the Decibel Beer and Metal Fest Denver, and apparently they were one of the heaviest bands of the weekend. This new band called Earthburner signed to M Theory.
Wow, I haven't heard of them.
Oh, you
Any
got to check it
insight?
out.
Yeah, I gotta check
Earthburner.
that out. I
Yeah.
definitely gotta check it out. I like Sanguisuga Box, so I definitely gotta check it out. I saw them on the tour they were with Lorna Shore,
Hmm.
and they were one of the heaviest bands of the night by
Yeah.
far. One of the
Even heavier
heaviest
than
bands.
Lorna.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes,
Yeah,
for
that's
me,
heavy.
from me, the two best bands of the night was actually Sanguisuga Bog and Kublai Khan, Texas.
Hmm.
I was very disappointed with Whitechapel. Not disappointed with the sound, but just disappointed in terms of the energy that they brought because there was no energy.
Yeah.
Or maybe I shouldn't say there was no energy. After you listen to Sanguisuga Bog live, and then you get hit with Kublai Khan, Texas, man,
Yeah.
the bar is like very high
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
as far as the hype and the energy in the room. Like you honestly feel like grabbing a chair and just going totally WWE and just like smashing somebody.
Everything.
Yeah, and then when Whitechapel came on, like it just lower. I mean, their performance was phenomenal, sound wise, performance wise was great. But in terms of what the energy that they bring on stage, the mood kind of came way down.
Yeah.
Lorna, I've seen Lorna a bunch of times. They're a great live band. They're one of my favorite deathcore bands for sure. But the pit during Sanguisugabog and Kublai Khan, Texas, nothing ever came close to that
Hmm.
you know, beyond them. And actually, for me, I became a huge fan of Kublai Khan Texas on that show. I felt both insulted and motivated by their lead singer.
Okay. Well, I mean, at least you felt something.
Yeah. If I was to hire somebody as a personal trainer, regardless of their skill
Hmm.
set, I would hire the lead singer from Kublai Khan Texas because he's the kind of guy that would motivate me because I would be scared shitless of him and I
Like
would do whatever it is that he tells me to do.
like drill sergeant.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He has that street vibe where he just doesn't give a shit about anything and like he kept cursing at people and I just love the whole vibe of that band. I think it's so organic. It's so hardcore, but in the roots of what hardcore really is, which is just like people going absolutely ape shit
Hmm.
at a venue. So I
Right.
really enjoyed that. Uh, you have anything else to add?
So, get your tickets, come see Dismember, come see Exodus. I think you'll have a great time at the Decibel Beer Metal Fest and Metal and Beer Fest. I don't say that because I've been writing for Decibel since '06. It's one of the few festivals where I actually feel like I belong. And not because I write for the magazine, but because the vibe there is very welcoming. And it's not a all-inclusive thing where, you could wear a unicorn, you know, uh horn on the top of your head, and everyone's going to be like, "Oh, that's cool," but you're going to feel like you're part of something.
Yeah, I kind of felt like I was wearing a unicorn when I wore my pink Entheos hoodie at Inferno this year. I definitely felt like a unicorn, but I totally know, I totally see what you're saying. I'm going to put a link in the description of this video for people to go check out the festival, pick up tickets. I'll put all of that information on the description of this video. That will make everybody's life a little bit easier.
Thank you. That'd be awesome.
So the next item on your agenda was the rise of AI in metal.
Mm.
Are you concerned? Because I think that the barn door is open and the horses have left, you know?
100% left. Everything is out. Everything is out of the gate. There's nothing. There's no mystery left. There's nothing left for the imagination with AI. Right? It's already out there. It's growing. Right? And that's the dangerous. I mean, I don't want to be the old guy screaming, screaming at the sky or whatever about AI. I mean, I support it in some ways and I don't support it in others. Um, you know, what I'm seeing, and this is just again, this is just my story, right? You can have a totally different story. Your listeners can have a totally different story. But I see like videos get like 200,000 views, 300,000 views. I don't know if there's a legit views on YouTube, but here's something that took, very little time to create off the backs of others getting, taking views away from, say, bands that are legitimately trying to, make their social media presence better, get those streaming revenues in, um, based off nothing, right? I mean, like, I could go and create a AI death metal channel and start to take away potential listeners from, say, a legitimate death metal band like Incantation, just because I made an AI channel that sounds like Incantation. Now, again, I don't want to be the guy screaming at the clouds. That's not my type. But at the same time, I think there's not a lot of guardrails at the moment in place to sort of delineate the things that we value as metalheads, and that's, blue collar guys making it work, going out there working hard, writing songs, being brutal, being intense, being part of something versus this. It's ephemeral, right? The AI thing, it's not there. It doesn't mean you belong to anything. It's just something you're listening to. And in that way, if you're just listening to it and it's brutal, then what's the difference between death metal and Britney Spears, right?
Yeah, sorry,
and
go
and,
ahead.
and for me, I take offense at that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with, say, Britney Spears Toxic, great pop song, but people who listen to that type of thing are typically just listening to listen. They're not, it's not a cultural, they're not imbued in that culture. They don't feel a sense of belonging in that culture. Our subculture is very strong and very physical. Like we buy physical media, we buy t-shirts, we buy hats, we buy all this stuff. Um, and I think AI kind of removes the physicality or the tactileness of our genre away from us. It strips away um, the reason to belong.
So so what's your view on, for example, bands now using AI for their artwork or for their t-shirt designs?
It's a double-edged sword, right? So one is you have a band who doesn't have a lot of money, right, to hire legitimate artists like Dan Seagrave or Axel Herman. Those are two legacy artists for the death metal scene. So they're like, well, wait, what if I just do something in Midjourney and type in a couple of prompts and I kind of get the skull and I get the crossbones and I get the Grim Reaper. Oh, that looks cool. I'll take that, right? I 100% get that. That's an economical decision that bands are making based on what they can do, what they can't do. If they want to look professional, they're going to go to Midjourney and type out those prompts and get that imagery that they want. That's totally cool. But for bands, I think that are more established to do that, again, they're probably facing, some economical decisions. Do I pay an artist $2,000 to create an album art, or do I pay zero or $5 or whatever the Midjourney license is to get something I can use in perpetuity? So I think there's economical choice. There's also a creative choice. Are you taking away, like a livelihood from an actual visual artist like Mark Rudolph here?
Mhm.
Are you taking away um, the creative impulse of people by just having something in AI that's been trained on everything? I mean, again, we don't have a lot of guardrails for this conversation. We don't have a lot of guardrails for the genre or for its creative impulse
I know,
right
but
now.
the way I feel about I'm going to tackle the artwork first, and then I'll go back to
Yeah,
the music itself.
sure.
The way I look about the artwork, I feel like there's a little bit of of some bands being a little bit hypocritical in terms of how they use AI. Because
Mm,
if I went and used AI to spoof one of their songs, they would be up in arms about how I'm taking away money from them
mm,
by doing something that's not necessarily illegal, but that's very shady in terms of how you're going about it. And
mm,
then they're kind of doing the same thing to artists out there by using AI to create their artwork. I feel like if you as an artist don't stand up for artists in general, regardless of whatever your art form is,
Right.
then you're as much of a problem as those who are downloading illegally your album.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, again, there's like, this is a, we like to work in a black and white arena, right? Good, bad, plus, one or a zero. Anything in between is like hard for us to kind of wrangle around. And this is where the law comes in, right? All, the legal laws around, creative concepts or artistic expression. Um, so yeah, you're probably right. I mean, bands who want to use AI to generate artwork, but also like rail against people who are actually using their art for their own art, it's probably hypocritical. Yeah,
And there's been some backlash from fans to bands about using AI for their artwork. I
absolutely.
think Pestilence comes to
Oh,
mind when they released
absolutely.
the album artwork, and everybody everybody and their mothers came out with pitchforks and cocktail Molotovs and get ready to crucify these guys. Then they had to go back and change the artwork and all of that.
Yeah.
So fans have kind of taken, like you said, we live we live in this subculture that everything has to either be black or white.
Hmm.
Not just the colors of the shirts and the graphics, but everything has to have this duality to it. But I see the fan base really pushing AI away as much as possible. I don't see metalheads in general really engaging positively with it. Like Unleash the Archers also had some issues because of AI in their music video and the way the video was created, which I thought for in their defense, if you're releasing an album about AI, having your video in AI makes total sense to me because it's
It's
part of the
conceptual.
concept of
Yeah.
that you're creating. It's
Yep.
different from you releasing an album about, the Salem trials and then everything is in AI. That to me has nothing to do with it. So
Yeah.
I think Unleash the Archers kind of got caught by this wave of hate towards everything
Mhm.
that's AI. But in their case, I honestly felt like it was called for because of the concept.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Pestilence is an interesting story because, Patrick Mameli has always been a firebrand, right? He's just a flamethrower guy. He's talked shit back in the day about Chuck Schuldiner, or he talked shit back in the day. I don't know if I can swear on your channel or not.
Yeah, you can say
Um,
whatever.
yeah, he's always been a shit talker, right? And that's his ego, that's his thing, right? And I've accepted that over the years. I'm a big fan of Pestilence. And I think the reason why they got so much pushback is because one, he's a flamethrower, right? He's like my creative expression. I'm this creative guy, and here he throws out this barfing cover that took 3 seconds to generate. So here's a guy who rails against other people about, this is my art. I do what I want. I'm spending life, my blood, sweat, and tears to create this. And on the other hand, he's spending 5 cents to create this album art for this thing he's so proud of. So I think people are calling BS on this guy, and rightfully so, because it was a terrible piece of artwork that he put forth. So I think that's true. For the Archers guys, they have a concept, and they probably maybe should have explained that. Hey, we have a concept about AI. Here's what it's about. We're also going to do AI videos because it's part of the concept. They probably wouldn't have got so much, public lashing for that decision. But again, metalheads are very sensitive. We don't like change, right?
I know, but the funny part is you have these two examples of people turning on the bands for the use of AI. And now I'm going to
Hmm.
give you two examples of two other bands who have used AI for their album artwork that I maybe I missed it, but I didn't see as much backlash.
Hmm.
DA Side being one of them, and Gravedigger. Both
Right.
of their latest records, Gravedigger's album comes out in the new year, but
Mhm.
you can tell it's AI generate. I mean, you could spot it like a mile away.
Right.
And DI side as well. And I didn't see, maybe it was me, maybe there was, maybe you know better, but I didn't see as much backlash towards those two bands as I saw Pestilence, for example. So was it really because AI or the personality of the person behind it also played a role in it?
I think it's also somehow things get more visible than others, right? And when they kind of, when they pick up steam, all shit rolls downhill. Um, so I think, with Pestilence, I mean, I would think more people know about Deicide than know about Pestilence, right? Just a matter of fact. But I think the way that album came out was promoted probably wasn't as visible, and also wasn't like as different from what Deicide have done before. If you look at their covers, they've had some pretty terrible covers over the years, right?
That's
Um,
true.
so you know, I would say anything after um maybe even Extension Redemption, maybe, I don't know, has been pretty terrible. Um, just depends on how you look at it, right? So I think in general, what's happening with people is they're either exposed to it through the internet, through social media, and they react to it because that's what people do these days is react on social media to things. Um, and if they don't see it, then they're not going to react to it, right? So if it's not put in their face somehow, then they don't react to it. And I think that's kind of how maybe DSI got away with it. Maybe Gravedigger, who are probably going to get away with it too, because I mean, how many people are, honestly listening to Gravedigger now? There's new albums,
I agree
right?
with you on that. Yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately, yeah, you're right about that. But
Under
do
the
you
Jolly
see
Roger, sure, people listen all day long, but new albums, I don't think they just want to, everyone just wants to hear the old stuff.
that is true. That is true.
Uh,
And as 25 rolls around, you obviously don't see this slowing down at all. So,
I don't.
what do you feel is the best approach for those that are on the fence, those that are worried about it? Is it embracing it? Is it being skeptical about it?
I think skepticism is always healthy. I think embracing it's always healthy. So it's a little bit of a balance, which we know that's not the best answer for people because people want to hear, "Yeah, I'm against it, I'm for it, right? I don't want to be both. Um, I think people should embrace AI in ways that make sense for the artist and ways for that make sense for our genre. And that can mean economic leverage, right? Allowing like lower income bands or no income bands to leverage a more professional platform to get something that's kind of cool. I'm not against that really. Um, what I'm really against is where people use AI to generate music and call it their own. That's something a little bit more tangible because I have an emotional attachment more to the music than say the artwork. That's just me. So if someone's going to have an AI cover, that's it. Maybe let's say it looks cool, I'll go with that. But let's say, for example, someone does an AI song, maybe it sounds cool, but if I don't have any emotional attachment to it and I know it's AI, I'm gonna be against that. So I think it's a plus and minus for AI to support and against.
Fair enough. I agree with you 100% on this. The other item on our list to discuss is Iron Maiden.
Yeah,
Obviously, Nico announces retirement from the band.
yeah.
Obviously, now the band has already mentioned who the drummer that's going to fill in for him. But as you move into 2025 and beyond, where do you see Iron Maiden going?
I think Iron Maiden are at the horizon or of their career, right? Meaning the other horizon, not the beginning, the end of it. And I think they're calling this out by calling these tours. I just saw the Iron Maiden, the Future Past tour, a month ago in Charlotte here in North Carolina. And they do a set list of those albums. They do them really well. I mean, Yannick is still running around doing splits on stage and acting like a maniac. Bruce is still running around. I mean, these guys are in their mid 60s, right? So they're probably looking at their retirement in the next 5 years, especially doing the world tours. Um, you know, Nico was with the band for what, 42 years. That's a lifetime, and think of it flying in jets, performing on stage, doing those tours after tours. So I think they're at the very end of their career but that's why they're bunching all these albums together and doing these sort of multi-album sets. And I think the next tour is Run for Your Lives tour. And I think that's next year and the year after. So again, I think they're coming to the end by doing all these sort of multi-album sort of concepts.
Do you
New
see
album
them?
plus old.
Do you see them creating now that Nico is leaving the band? Do you see them creating any new music without him?
I do. I mean, I think that Steve Harris can't stop creating music. I mean, he's got British Lion, which is Simon Dawson's from British Lion. I think he was also in thrash band called Dearly Beheaded. But you know, Steve's not quitting. He's going to still produce music for British Lion. So what's if he's going to do it for British Lion? Why wouldn't he do it for the biggest moneymaker on the planet, Iron Maiden? Um, you know, there's nothing wrong with the last Iron Maiden album. Actually, people kind of liked it. Um, so I think that if they can do another album and have energy in it, then I think people will accept it and they'll do it. I think if they can put energy into it, they'll do it. If they can't put energy into it, they're probably not going to release an album that phones it in. That's just not their style.
So do you think the when it comes to Iron Maiden, is the future of the band completely handcuffed to Bruce Dickinson then?
Absolutely.
Because I don't think
100%.
they can have a tour without him or an album without him.
Well, and this gets into the next point, right? Where we talk about, the bands playing live and recording albums without critical members. Um, you know, Sepultura, we just talked about in the first thing, right? No Max, no Igor, right? So without Bruce, I think there's no Iron Maiden. As much as I love Adrian Smith, Yannick's a fun guy, um, but I just see that that's their sound. Bruce is their sound. Much like Journey continuing out with, without Steve Perry. They found a guy who sounds like him, but it's still not Steve Perry. I think Iron Maiden is too much Iron Maiden for them to continue without Bruce, and I think fans would negatively react if they did that.
I agree with you, and I think the future of the band, as it dwindles towards their you call it Twilight? You didn't call it
Yeah,
Twilight.
I called it the Horizon to be more
Horizon.
positive.
Yeah, okay, so I was calling it Twilight. Into the twilight of their career, I
Yeah,
agree with you. I think it's completely handcuffed to Bruce.
100%.
For as long as he has energy to perform and the willingness to perform, I
Yeah.
think the band will continue. And but I think they're also looking at maybe not going out on a sour note, going out on as a positive note as possible, because sometimes there's always a problem of not knowing when to hang them up.
Mm,
You go a little bit too far and then you kind of become a meme of who you used to be. And I think
100%.
bands sometimes don't realize that or they
Yeah.
lose track of that because they're in a bubble and they hear the people that pump their tires all the time and not necessarily the people who are a little bit more critical and force them to think a little bit more. So I hope that doesn't happen with Iron Maiden. I hope they understand that nothing can last forever, but it's better to call it quits while we're still Iron Maiden versus becoming a less of a version of Iron Maiden.
Sure. And I think that goes too for the guitar players, right? I mean, if you had Dave Murray and Adrian Smith, but without Yannick, I think people be okay with that.
I agree.
And if you had Adrian and Yannick without Dave Murray, I think people would be like, I'm not so sure about that, right? I don't think they'd accept that too much. That's my opinion.
There's key members in Iron Maiden that have to be there. With
Right.
with if you're building a pyramid, obviously on top of that pyramid you put Bruce,
Yeah.
but there's other key members that I agree with you that play a role that it's important. And not
Yeah.
to say that Nico's role wasn't important, but I he already had been replaced on some tours or so it's nothing really new per
Yeah.
se, and everybody understands that there's a health reason behind it. So I
Yeah.
think fans are a lot more compassionate to the reason why the band is moving on and he's not there.
Sure. And he paid his dues, right? 42 years. I mean, come
Oh,
on.
it's
That's
more
a
than
that's
enough.
a long time. And I think metal fans recognize that. That's hard work, right? That's the guy, that's the blue collar guy going to work every day, clocking in, clocking out, doing the best job he can for 42 years. I think people respect that.
So as we move into that into your last topic, which was Ben's performing without key members,
Uh,
My Dying Bride, I think, is the one that really
yeah,
sparked this conversation as of late,
yeah,
without Aaron being on vocals and having Miko from Swallow the Sun filling in.
right.
What's your take on that? Because the band obviously released a new record this year. They
Hmm.
weren't able to really, they canceled tours, they canceled festival appearances. There's
Hmm.
obviously some turmoil between Aaron and the rest of the band. Now they announced that next year they're going to be performing with Miko from Swallow the Sun on vocals. What's your take on that?
Interesting. I know those guys personally, right? I mean, I've been friends with those guys since the mid 90s. Um, I don't know the whole story behind Aaron and Calvin's not Calvin, but yeah, Calvin. Calvin? No. Jeez. I'm having a brain fart in the middle of this interview. Andy. Aaron and Andy, right? Calvin's the guitar player who left a long time ago. Um, I don't know what the difference, what the beef between those two guys are. There's something that those guys, lifelong friends, they've been in a band together for 30 years plus. Um, Something is between them personally, right? In I don't know if it's, something that's catastrophic enough for Aaron to split permanently, but Aaron went ahead and did High Parasite, right? That's his new band.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's what I want to do. So maybe he was tired of too much doom and gloom, like the slow plodding sameness that Andy really likes. Andy likes this heavy sort of plodding doom metal stuff. Aaron wanted to be more gothic, and obviously, My Dying Bride did gothic before, right? I mean, they're no strangers. They like Gods of the Sun, 100% gothic metal album. But I think he wanted to do something else. And those songs that are shorter, right, 4 minutes, 5 minute songs or less, versus say a 7 minute song or a 10 minute song, I think creatively Aaron probably, as he's also getting to his horizon, he's probably thinking. I want to do something that rocks a little more. I want to do something a little more active and maybe where he has a little more control over the creative process. Because I think most of My Dying Bride music is written by Andy.
Yeah, I believe you're correct. At least from my discussions with both of them, I get that same impression as well. My views on this in terms of bands performing without key members, I think you can sell it in a way, um, or you can completely botch it and make the experience very displeasing for the fans.
Right.
So if you're My Dying Bride and you're announcing a special festival performance or even a special short tour run with a guest vocalist, because you're not announcing the departure of Aaron. They're
Yep.
just announcing that they're doing a show with a guest vocal. I think
Right.
if you present it in that spectrum, I think it's kind of appealing. For me, at least, it's kind of appealing because
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of Miko's vocal style and what he
Mhm.
does with Swallow the Sun. To hear him sing some My Dying Bride songs, I think that would be such a cool experience. I would be
Right.
totally down for it. Now, I think it would
Yep.
be a completely different story if you announced that Aaron has left the band, we have this new vocalist, and here we go. Uh,
Right.
that to me, probably a harder pill to swallow.
I agree. And I think, there's something you mentioned there. Um, I I think with My Dying Bride using Miko, who I'm also friends with, it makes sense. Miko, was inspired by Aaron. So he in a lot of cases when he's singing in Swallow the Sun, he sounds like Aaron. Not just the singing, but the growling, right? I mean, he's definitely taken a page from Aaron, especially, vintage Aaron,
Mhm.
from the glory years. Um, but I think the difference between Miko coming in and being part of My Dying Bride and Aaron not being part of My Dying Bride is the fact that they canceled a bunch of festivals right before this announcement. They canceled MDF, they canceled a bunch, and it's like, wait a minute, why are you canceling a festival? Aaron's doing another band. You're going to go out with this other guy who's not Aaron. What the hell? I think if they performed those festivals with Aaron, came out and said, "Hey, Aaron's going to take a break for a little while. He's going to do his thing. That's thumbs up. That's cool. We're going to put Miko in. You guys know him. He's awesome. Let's go." I think fans would have been like, "Oh, that's interesting." But now they're thinking like, "What's going on?" Like, you people are suspicious by nature, and they're already thinking conspiracy, right? They're going to get rid of Aaron, put this new guy in. He's younger. He can tour. Blah blah blah. Not that Mighty Bride have ever toured very much because they got 15,000 members and it takes a lot of, it takes a village to get them on tour. Um, but I think that's the reason why you're seeing so much backlash to this announcement. Plus, Aaron, like Bruce, is very singular. He's hard to replace, and he is the guy who gave voice to Miko. So anyway, that's kind of
Yeah,
how I take.
it's not an easy dynamic. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
and
Uh,
we don't like change, right? Remember that?
Yeah, we don't, and we're very protective of specifically bands that had a special impact on our lives, bands that we connect to, like you said before about AI connecting on an emotional level.
Mhm.
When we connect with music on an emotional level, you feel completely immersed in it, and it's almost like you own it to a certain degree, and
Right,
it becomes way more evolved than a regular band insert any pop rock group out there changing a member like NSYNC changing a member for me wouldn't I wouldn't give two shits about it, but I
right.
think even NSYNC fans probably wouldn't give two shits about it, because it's there's not as much of an emotional connection with the music. So
Yeah,
we're super invested in these bands. We're super invested in bands that had an impact on our upbringing and on our own very own metal taste. So I
mm,
understand where fans are coming from.
yeah,
For me, it all comes down to how you announce it, how you present it, how
I
you
agree.
spin it. Like you can do it in a very positive way that actually gets people excited about versus putting people on the defensive.
Right. And I think you said something. You and I had a funny disagreement, or your son and I had a funny disagreement at Inferno last year. I can't remember the Swedish band you were talking about. What's the Swedish band? Kind of Meshuggah-y, played with a lot of lights, like vertical, horizontal
Oh, Orbit
lights.
Culture?
Orbit Culture. There we go. Yeah. And I was like, oh yeah, I've seen this before. And this is like total derivative of Fear Factory, right? And right. I mean, even the logo looks like Fear Factory. And you guys were like, we love this. We're into this. Like, so what I'm saying is you guys were so emotionally invested into it that you're willing to, like, let's not call it like a fight, but you're willing to like defend it. right?
The funny thing about I'm glad you brought this up. The funny thing is the two bands have toured together in North America with Machine Head. I actually went to that show.
Mhm.
And when I was there talking to Dino and with the guys from Morbid Culture, it dawned on me how close the two logos are.
Yeah.
And then what I start to realize is I give Avenged Sevenfold so much shit for
Hmm.
their bat head with the wings because to me that's overkill. So I
Yeah.
give them so much shit for ripping that. And then when I look at Orbit, I'm totally cool with it. It's like
I,
it makes no sense. It makes no
right.
sense.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah. But I think, like with going back toward the topic at hand, bands, playing live, recording albums with critical members. I mean, the most famous example in our scene is Napalm Death, right? They don't have original members left. Venom doesn't have, well, Venom Inc. doesn't have
I
any
didn't
original
make,
members
but
left.
yeah,
Guar in Flames doesn't have any original members left.
I know, but in Flames, while they don't have any original members left, this line, well, I shouldn't say this lineup. I mean, Anders, he's been the front man for a very long time.
True.
So
Yeah.
even though he was not an original member of the band, people kind of look at him as an original member of the band, if you know what I mean.
Just like Sepultura, right? I
Yeah, yeah.
mean, Paolo and Andreas are kind of feel like original members because they've been in the band since what, 80, Paolo before, but 87 with Schizophrenia with Andreas. So yeah, so interesting how we react to Aaron not being in My Dying Bride, but are okay with Sepultura continuing without Max, or Napalm Death continuing without Mick Harris, right? Um,
I don't know if people were okay with Sepultura continuing without Max, to be honest with you.
but they must have been because they did how many albums after
I
it?
know that is true. That is true. And they were very successful at those albums. Quadrat for me is one of their best albums ever, to be honest with you.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed.
So, it's incredible that they released such a strong album after all these years. I think it comes down to the presentation or on how you floated, how you presented to fans.
Hmm.
I would like to see Miko performing with My Dying Bride because to me it would be a little bit of the novelty of it to see what he would do with that band in that kind of performance. And like you said, his vocal style is not that far away from Aaron, so it's not like you're going to feel like, wow, who is this up there? Like this doesn't sound like a My Dying Bride song at all. So I'm kind of okay with it for now. I might change my opinion depending on how 2025 goes as far as My Dying Bride is concerned.
Sure, yeah, and I think a lot of the success of that lineup will continue. Will they can't cancel any shows, right? That's one thing. Two, Miko has to be at least as good as Aaron sonically, but Aaron has a presence on stage. So does Miko. If it's just Miko standing there singing those songs like pantomiming, people are gonna be like, yeah, this is BS, right? But if he comes out and he crushes it, and they don't cancel shows, and they get those live dates in, people be like, oh, they're going to accept it, right? They're going to be like, oh, cool. I'm into this thing. I can also appreciate High Parasite, which is Aaron's new band, which Greg McIntosh from Paradise Lost produced. I'm into that too. I can have both. Amazing, right? And I can also have Swallow the Sun, which I'm also a big fan of, and I know those guys,
Mhm.
right? So
Me too.
I can have the best of three worlds.
So, with that in mind, let's reach the last topic of this conversation, and
Yeah.
that is most anticipated albums for 2025. Do
Oh
you have
boy.
any in mind?
Any in mind? That's interesting. So I have bands that I like that are doing records. Paradise Lost is one of them. Um, Anticipated is an interesting thing I struggle with. I think Unleashed are writing an album right now, which, I'm a big fan of Unleashed. I have a Grave shirt on right now. Grave is reformed, right? So we could talk about Grave. They could do a new album with the original lineup from Into the Grave. That'd be fantastic. Big albums. I mean, Megadeth are probably writing a record right now. I don't know if it'll come out in 2025. Um, Machine Head are writing a record right now. That might come out in 2025. Trying to think who else would be big on the list. Dismember, oddly enough, have an album in the works. I'm not sure if that'll come out in 2025. Um, but albums that are actually slated to come out, you have Arch Enemy, right? Blood Dynasty. They're always a big glitzy release, right? Everything around Michael Mott and Arch Enemy are huge. Um, are they going to be able to continue with growth? I don't know. I mean, I saw the new record, the new song that they released. I don't remember the name of it, and it didnh have any energy for me. It was like it was
Which one? Liars
act.
and Thieves?
There we go. Yeah, that's it. Right. I liked it because I like his sound. but I'm not sure if I want to go back to it. It just seems like a record that might come out, get a lot of attention at first, but might kind of fizzle, and I think they're kind of afraid of that.
For me, the only two that I can think of that I'm really excited about for different reasons. One is Orbit Culture. Speaking of Orbit Culture, they're going to be releasing their first record with Century Media, and I believe that one will be coming out in 2025. I think summer of 2025, something like that. And
Hmm.
I'm really excited to see what they're going to do on a major label like Century Media, coming from Seek and Strike.
Right.
They released incredible music before, so I'm sure they also have now the pressure of a much larger platform. They've been touring with massive bands like Slipknot. They've been growing exponentially. It seems like every month they're getting bigger and bigger. So I'm
Hmm.
excited to see what the boys from Sweden do. And then the other one, maybe for different reasons, is Ghost, because I honestly think there's going
Oh.
to be a new Ghost record in 2025. At least there's some hints about a new Ghost record in 2025. I know they're a very polarizing band. People
Hmm.
either love them or hate them. There's no in between. I wasn't a fan of the last two records at all.
Hmm.
I'm a fan of more of the earlier stuff from Ghost because I thought it was a little bit darker, a little bit more sinister.
Yeah.
It played more into the whole, devil realm, rats.
Yeah.
I'm not a dancer, so like, the latest two records didn't really do it for me.
Right.
But I'm still a big fan of Ghost. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to see where they're going with their next record. Are they going to continue down the same line of the last two albums, creating more easy to listen music, for lack of a better, I don't want to call it pop, so I'm going to call it easy listening music? Or are they going to go back to a little bit of the roots and create something a little bit heavier, a little bit darker, a little bit more down tuned? I don't know. I'm excited to see what's coming out of that camp because they're always very creative, and they really know how to promote anything that they do. Like
Mm.
they have this great machine behind them.
They do. I mean, they're a huge band. As much as I like their singles, I think a lot of times they kind of fall into the Scooby-Doo, realm of metal. Where you kind of feel like it's almost like there's a parody thing going on there, and there probably is, because Tobias is a very, tongue-in-cheek kind of guy, but he's also very serious. I mean, there's a lot of symbolism imbued in in the artwork that Zabignew puts for him. There's a lot of cultural references in the music, and references to Swedish pop stars, and there's a lot of things hidden in his sound that I kind of I appreciate. On the surface, yeah, Scooby-Doo metal. Deep underneath, there's some cool stuff going on. So I agree with you. I think Ghost, if they put something out in 2025, that'll be definitely one of the signposts of the year.
I really think so. The question is going to be, is he going to hit home? I mean, doesn't matter. They already announced a massive tour for 2025,
Yeah.
and they're still adding more dates to it. So I honestly don't see them going on that big of a tour still on the previous records. Like they have to have something
Hmm.
that really propels that tour and brings people in. Not that they need help bringing people in, because every time they play in North America, they do very well. They play super large venues. I remember
Right.
the first time I saw them play at a 400 venue capacity in Toronto. Was
Hmm.
really at the beginnings of Ghost.
Yep.
Uh, so I'm happy that I've been there for that part of the band. To see them now in these big arenas is completely mind-blowing to see where they've come from. So
Right.
we'll see. We'll see. I think there will be a record. It's a big, massive world tour to go on just on the back of albums that already have. The last record has what, like 3 years on it already, or something like that.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I think the other band that's going to kind of blow up a little bit is Wardruna, the Norwegian band. It's not even metal, really. It's more world music or whatever, dark Norwegian Nordic folk. And the reason why I say that is I just did a cover story on them for Decibel, which is going to be coming up next month. Um, and I've been following them for a while. I know the guys that are kind of around that band. Obviously, Kvitraven, who was in Gorgoroth, friends with Ivar from Enslaved. First Viking metal band of our era, outside of Bathory and um, yeah. But I think Wardrobe is going to be huge, and the reason for it is they continually play crazy large venues with capacity or at capacity with zero advertising,
I
right?
agree with you. I agree
Uh,
with you. I saw them in Toronto on their last tour run.
yeah.
They played a massive venue in Toronto.
Yep.
There was barely any advertisement, and the place was sold out.
Yep, exactly. And if you notice the crowd is like people that are in their 70s who like world music, who want to hear more about Nordic folk music because they're into that stuff. They listen to like public radio or something. They listen to world music. They're kind of clued into that. Then you have the people that are really into like the Vikings TV series who like to cosplay, right? Um, you have people that are into metal who want to follow the guy who was in Gorgoroth, right? Or you may be just interested in Viking culture, and this is a way to kind of absorb that in our countries, Canada, United States from that from them, right? You kind of get a sense of what's happening there. For somehow they've ended up being an interesting band that have very much crossed over all demographics and music styles while not being anything. I mean, the Nordic folk music. What does that mean,
Yeah,
right?
they're kind of like a Venn diagram where
Yeah.
they meet all of these other genres, but all of these other genres cross-pollinate with them.
Hmm.
Another band is Heilung. I feel like Heilung is in that
Yeah.
same sphere
Agreed.
of capturing people who are not necessarily into metal, or some are, some aren't, some are into that cosplay, some are into the more shaman st lifestyle. Like it's just. I'm really intrigued by these bands, and I think for me, they're able to provide me something that it's unique, it's different.
Yeah.
It's almost, I call it a 4D experience. You go to a show, it is not just about the sound, it's not just about the music or the vocal performance, it's about what you see, the ambiance that they create. It's way more evolved, and I really enjoy it.
And I think Heilung is a good example. I think they're also on the way. They're also up, right? And they're also very popular, especially worldwide. Um, and I think what they bring to the table is in an era of no culture or all cultures, they allow people to focus on something of a culture, right? And I'm not saying Heilung or Wardruna are, say, explicitly Nordic per se. I mean, there's nothing Norwegian about Wardruna outside of the fact that they're Norwegian band members, right? They are a world music thing. They're drawing inspirations from all over the place. Um, but you get the sense that you get to singularly look into or lens into a specific culture that you can relate to or follow or get in an era of too much noise. Like they're the signal in the noise, right? And I think that if other bands can kind of find a signal like that, they can be super successful as well.
I agree. Could not agree more.
Yeah.
Chris, well, thank you very much for the chat. Like I said before, I'm gonna have the links to the Decibel beer and metal fest in the description of this video, so people can go check it out, buy some tickets. Once again, man, thank you very much for taking the time and to review a little bit of what perhaps 2025 is going to have in store for us.
Thank you very much for having me, Pedro. Looking forward to seeing my own voice and face on A&P-Reacts, which is a great channel. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, because you guys deserve all the success you're getting.
Thank you very much, man. I really appreciate that. I'll see you at Inferno.
See you in Norway.